We're back on the Morning Brew here today. I'm Larry Ahrens, your host, along with Aaron Muffaletto, our co-host here on the Morning Brew. As often happens today, you meet people through social media, and this gentleman that I'm about to introduce contacted me when he heard we were starting a new television show. I like ambitious people, Joe. This is great. And here you are. Joe Swinger is an Albuquerque guy. He is an author and speaker. And he is joining us here this morning, the author of Beans of Wisdom. And
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming up and being with us here on the Morning Brew.
Especially in your debut week. I love it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
You know, I started reading this book, Joe, and it's really fascinating, the story. And I was curious, what brought you to the point of writing this book?
Well, initially, the Beans of Wisdom started as my own journey into self-discovery as a leader. I was always able to achieve results, but I was never that well liked. So the associate surveys would come out and I never did that well. So I really started to discover what is it that I could do to better myself as a leader. So I went and looked at about 100 traits, and if I asked myself, if I had 7 traits I could use to be a great leader, what would those traits be? And that's what I did, and so I read the leadership books, did all the leadership training, and what I found out is that it wasn't so much about leadership, it was more about becoming an authentic human.
Yeah, being very genuine in what you were doing.
Right.
And did you learn these things by trial and error, or did you establish some guidelines and start working them in your leadership position, or how did it?
Yeah, that's what I did. I started becoming more engaged with the associates. So if you look at some of the beans, it's more caring about the people, loving the people, getting a purpose. But the book really came about after the politics last year, with all the mudslinging and everybody talking about each other. And I thought somebody really had to write a book about what it really takes to be a great leader today.
Yeah, and one of the things I read was you said something about if you're really passionate about something, stick with it. The longer you stick with it, the more it'll actually happen. And that's one of the #1 things I got out of it. What was something that you see, if somebody reads this, what's the #1 thing that they should take away from it?
Well, I think the #1 thing is you have to know your purpose. So you discover your purpose. If you're unhappy in a job, if you're at a job that you don't feel you fit, it's usually because your purpose is not being met. And so once you get on your purpose, it's really all about perseverance. And a lot of people end up not making their purpose is because they give up on themselves. You know, they'll start a business and they'll quit in 90 days. Yeah. Whereas if you're in a company, you'll go for 20 years to become an executive or something. And I think people sell themselves short by giving up on themselves.
Yeah. The first bean of wisdom, and there are 7 of them, is the bean of purpose, like you were mentioning. And I think it's important that you really sit down in a quiet moment and decide what your purpose is. You really have to get inside yourself to find out what that means. And it sounds like you did just that.
Well, it's absolutely right. You really have to get some moments of solitude and find out what is it you're really all about. And if I can use this mousetrap.
Sure.
This brought some props with him
little
today.
dollar mousetrap here.
Yeah.
But what's cool about it is you put a piece of cheese and you stick it on the floor and forget about it until you hear the clack.
Yes.
And what's great about the mousetrap is that there's a purpose to it. We give it a purpose. And most people don't know what their purpose is. And if a mousetrap has a purpose, shouldn't we have a purpose as a human being? And so the guy at home watching, or the lady at home watching our show, maybe out of a job or hates their job, really has to discover what their purpose is.
One of the other beans of wisdom that I really like in the book is the bean of forgiveness. This is one of the most difficult things to do.
For anybody.
To forgive. And describe what that means.
True forgiveness is all about energy. When we have regrets for people or we don't forgive them, there's a lot of anger tied up, a lot of energy. And so what we need to do is release that energy by forgiving people. Doesn't mean we have to associate with them again, work with them again, but getting the forgiveness and moving on, whether that's your parents or
I was always taught that by forgiving, that doesn't mean you're condoning what has happened, whatever that person did. That doesn't mean you're accepting it. It just means that you're actually releasing it from yourself.
Really, that's what it's all
Taking
about.
that burden off
Yes.
of yourself.
And so you release the energy, and again, if you don't want to deal with them, if you've been hurt in business or whatever, it's just getting on and moving forward. Whether that mean, and taking responsibility, not holding anybody accountable for your situation.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. A lot of people always put it on themselves. Oh, well, it's my fault, and they just have to let that go. And not only forgiving others, but forgiving themselves and letting it go.
Right, and not saying it's the government's fault or your parents' fault or whatever.
Now, the story itself is a parable about a homeless man. Can you walk us through that?
Yes, it's about a man. It's Christmas Eve. He's lost his wife, his family, his home, his business, and he happens to go into a food shelter. Again, on Christmas Eve, he meets this mysterious stranger called Chris, who takes him on this incredible journey of redemption and reunion on Christmas Eve. So he encounters these 7 beans, and it's set up so they give the beans to the kids, and he learns in the process.
It really is a great story. This isn't just a book for business leaders. It's a book for everybody. What would you recommend? Who would you recommend this to? Anybody?
It's a book about leadership, but also being a leader in life. And I think we're all leaders, whoever we come in contact with. It doesn't have to be somebody younger, it could be somebody older. We meet a lot of people every day, and I think that every relationship we make with people, we could impose some kind of leadership guideline with them. And even for kids, I've heard that it's very good for kids, reading to kids, and I think it's 7 traits that are great for anybody.
Now, take us into the situation that you found yourself in. You were a leader. Give us a little of your background. You were obviously leading a group of associates in some kind of business.
Yes, I worked for, I have a background in retail management, and very high pressure, so it's all about results. And I was also always very good at getting results. But, when you get the surveys, you find out that the associates are dissatisfied. And so you have to find a way to make it good for them to come to work. And that's why I like to use the rose as an analogy. This is all about love. It's about, while the rose has these thorns or prickles, that's what they call them, you also have associates like that. Associates that, people don't like. They cause trouble. They have a bad attitude. But like the rose, that's beautiful and has fragrance, so do the associates. And as a great leader, you have to find out what it is that makes that person tick. And we always say, stop and smell the roses. Well, I think we need to stop and smell, the roses with the associates. If that means coming in early, leaving late, just anything to spend more time with the associates.
And sometimes a lot of people will look over some people just because, oh, well, she seems mean. Well, maybe they don't know exactly what that person is doing. I mean,
you don't know what's going on in their life.
Exactly. And I think you kind of hit this on the buzzers. You need to understand each person's great traits and make those flourish out of them.
So as you transformed as a leader, when did you start to notice that the people working with you and for you transformed as well?
Well, what was great is I started doing little things. I would do like the shave ice, where you make these slushies or whatever. And my associates love that the best. And I would do that on Saturdays and take them on the sales floor. And I think they really liked to see me as a servant leader because they always thought it was all about the numbers. And so we started having more fun. The numbers started getting better. I started developing more leaders. And again, it was finding what makes each person tick. And sometimes it was taking that person that no one likes out to lunch and say, hey, what can I do as a leader to help you excel and find out what your real purpose is? Because I think a leader has to know their purpose before you can help an associate find theirs.
Joe, we have about a minute left. The book is Beans of Wisdom. It's going to be out in a couple of weeks. Website, information on the book.
Beansofwisdom.com is the website. And if you go over there, I have a thing where you can get 2 free chapters, instant download.
Very good. And you do a lot of speaking around the country, don't you?
I do. Yes, I do. And some business training.
And you're an Albuquerque native.
Albuquerque native, yes. And I'm going to be doing the commencement address for ITT this week. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Well, fantastic. Joe, this is a good read for anybody who wants to learn about leadership, learn about lessons in life, and learn about positive influences in what you do in your life and in your everyday. And it's great to, I'm very happy you reached out to be with us here on the Morning Brew, and I'm glad you could be here on our big debut week.